Madison Strachey and I are going to give you a legislative session recap. As we went into the session, our priorities were to get a balanced budget. We found ourselves in a unique position that we haven't seen for 7 or 8 years in the legislature, but we were looking at a $432 million budget gap or deficit. And the budget has to be balanced both going into the next biennium and ending it. And so they had to make up $432 million to fill that gap. There's only two ways to do it, either increase revenue or cut spending. And we weighed in on several bills that would contribute to this. But in the end, the budget was passed with a day or two to spare, and they did fill the gap. There was additional property tax relief in the budget through both Tier 1 and Tier 2. One is the Property Tax Credit Fund. The other one is the school district property tax credit that used to be known as the 1107 credits, but they front-loaded that during the special session. And now they are somewhat referred to as Tier 2. Those are tax credits paid upfront on behalf of the taxpayer by the state to the schools. But you can see on the slide that if you have that, that they put $96 million in the biennium budget for the first year and $150 million in the second year. We're disappointed in that. We're glad we were able to get this much in a year where we had a budget shortfall. But property taxes, conservatively speaking, are going up somewhere between 220, 225 million per year, and those keep piling on top of each other. So there's a lot that we still need to get done in this particular term. This is the 90-day session. Next year we'll have the 60-day session. We will be working tirelessly with senators and other stakeholders during the interim to fill the gaps that somewhat widened in the property tax discussion. One of the bills that we supported, which was introduced by Senator Von Gillern from Omaha, he's the chair of the Revenue Committee. It modified several sales tax exemptions, income tax provisions. Basically, what it did was it clawed back some of the incentives that were created and some appropriations that were made in the previous 3 or 4 years. And that will generate, on an average, about $100 million per year to help balance the budget. Okay, next slide. So, and then another one we wanted to highlight is LB 645, which was introduced by Senator Bo Ballard from the northwest part of Lincoln. It changed the school as well as the Nebraska State Patrol retirement systems. It did not take away anybody's retirement benefits, but it reduced the amount of funding that the state was putting in it for the foreseeable future, rather than funding it at 100%. As long as it stays actuarially sound, they will be funding it with 2% of the compensation. That will provide 2% of the compensation of all members. So that was another thing that was done, and for the most part, the schools agreed to that. Nothing's easy when you have a budget shortfall, but they did get that done. As far as school funding reform, Senator Jana Hughes from Seward once again had a very good bill. As she introduced it, it was similar to her LB 9 during the special session last year. That would have lowered the maximum levy rates for schools and change some other provisions as far as foundation aid, increasing foundation aid. But by the time they were done with the budget, about the only thing that we could help her salvage coming out of the Education Committee was to create a school financing review commission. Coincidentally, we saw a notice on Facebook today that the governor is looking for applicants. Agriculture, someone from agriculture is a named category for this 17-member Finance Reform Commission. There are 3 senators, an appointee from the governor, and then several others that from different walks of life, school administration, school boards, things like that. So they will be putting that together. They're charged with looking at the current TIOSA formula. Does it work? How can we make it better? Also looking at school or student performance outcomes based upon how we're funding schools. And it was also stated in the legislation that they need to be looking at ways to reduce the state's over-reliance on property taxes. There were 4 bills. There were several bills, but 4 notable bills that were also introduced. Part of what went on in the session was that the legislature chose to balance the budget first and then deal with property tax relief. There were these 4 very notable bills, 3 of them introduced by Senator Tom Brandt and the other one introduced by Senator Hughes. 3 of them would have increased revenues by eliminating some sales tax exemptions. LB 169, somewhat referred to as a luxury tax, creating a luxury tax on certain services such as chartered flights, tattoos, dating services. It also was amended to increase cigarette taxes. If it would have been passed, it would have generated $82 million per year. LB 170, very similar, created sales tax on candy and soft drinks. All of this was intended to put at least another $100 million per year into the 2 property tax credit funds. LB 564, which Senator Brandt introduced on our behalf, originally introduced, it would have put an additional $150 million into Tier 2 each year to keep up with at least the growth in school property taxes for schools. The legislature wasn't ready to tackle that or couldn't find the 33 votes to do it. We worked our darndest to help them do it, but nonetheless, these came up short. And Senator Hughes's bill, as you can see, would have increased sales tax on what are electronic nicotine delivery systems, and that would have generated about $35 million. There was some reluctance on the part of a few senators to go this direction because they felt that we were just pouring money into a bucket that had a hole in the bottom of it for the property tax credits. But they have pledged that they're going to work with us during the interim to repair that bucket and then come up with the resources through spending reductions, reform, things like that. So we have their commitment. We'll see how willing and ready they are to tackle some of the opposition, but we're going to be working hard on that in the interim because here at Farm Bureau, we believe that these things are won or lost in the interim, and we need to be ready to go before they even convene in January of next year for the 60-day session. And with that, now I think I'm handing it off to Madison to talk about a few other bills.
Yes, let me see if I can get the slide to change. Okay, there it goes. LB 646, as many of you might remember as the Brand Bill, originally exempted registered feedlots from the fees under the Nebraska Livestock Brand Act. However, throughout this session, several amendments or iterations of the bill came about, but towards the end, there was a compromise on select file that resulted in a modified fee structure, reducing fees for registered feedlots by 50%. However, it did not go across the finish line as it was not scheduled for debate on final reading. So that means it'll be carried over to 2026. But in addition, there was an interim study that was created to address and analyze the this issue to come forward next session with maybe a better path forward or a plan. And then LB 663, introduced by Senator Storr, would create efficiencies for planning and zoning, as well as county board assessment process for conditional use and special exception applications for those who plan to build livestock facilities. Essentially, this was putting a shot clock on those who are wanting to build livestock facilities. And we're hoping to make this a more fair and efficient process for our producers here in Nebraska. Next, the paid sick leave, LB 415, introduced by Senator Ballard. This was pretty much just kind of just streamline processes under the Nebraska Healthy Family and Workplaces Act. Under the act, it was essentially, we were excited to get an amendment that would, let me pull up my sheet here. As amended through AM 545, exemptions were created, an initiative for temporary or seasonal ag workers, employers younger than 16, and employers who had 11 or less employees. So those exemptions pretty much were passed and signed into law to help with those employers. So if you have any questions on that, let us know. That did pass in a narrow vote of a 33 to 16 vote. And Jordan, do you want us to take questions now, or would you rather go ahead and get started in yours and take questions at the end?
Why don't we do it at the end? Just as folks are thinking about those, let them percolate a little bit, and we'll run through. So I'll run through the federal issues update real fast, and we'll definitely leave time for questions at the end. Appreciate all that. And I want to pull this slide up here again, and this is kind of an updated of where we have been on some things. And this is a document that, or a slide, I guess, an image that was created as Republicans were putting some things together at the beginning of the year. And we're already in June and trying to see, this was a really kind of a House slide. It started on the House side of things. And it really highlights where they wanted to go. And again, I highlight Republicans because they're the party in charge. But on the House side of things, they were able to get their budget resolution done. They were able to fund the federal government through the rest of this fiscal year. They were able to move reconciliation out of committee. They were able to put it on the floor and pass it. The one thing they are still working through is that May through July, working through that appropriations. If you see that kind of pink at the bottom, they are still working through the appropriation side of things. They've got a debt ceiling vote that they've got to walk through. They've got to figure out the National Defense Reauthorization Bill as well. But the House was able to move their reconciliation bill through, and we'll talk a little bit about that. You can move to the next slide here, Madison. But really, I wanted to highlight that again to kind of give an update. I've shown this slide several times as to where Republicans wanted to go on the House side and where they are. The reconciliation package has been the big thing we've paid very close attention to, and been very active in trying to get our priorities done. So this bill actually encompasses two of the priorities that the American Farm Bureau, as well as our state board of directors, moved through. That is to get an extension of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act tax provisions, as well as they added in a lot of 90%, 85% of the Farm Bill in this reconciliation package as well. And again, on the House side of things, the bill extends the current income tax rates of where they are currently. There are some other little changes here and there on some individual things, but really the big stuff for us, the bonus depreciation is back at 100%. Section 179 is actually increased to $2.5 million and is indexed to inflation. They've made permanent Section 199A, and they also have the estate tax exemption at $15 million indexed to inflation, up from 13.9 just at 14. So actually some improvement on that front, given what inflation has done, given what the price of farmland continues to do, as we all know very well on this call. Really really, the extension of those is good news from our standpoint. We worked really hard with our congressional delegation, talking through with them about what these tax provisions mean for agriculture, and so we were very happy to see those included in the House version of the reconciliation bill. I'll talk about Senate here after I get done on the Farm Bill side. On the Farm Bill side, they decided to include a majority of what we have been talking about and what passed the House last year, the House Ag Committee, excuse me, in terms of a farm bill. That included increased reference prices for Title I programs, ARC and PLC across the board. That included increased investments in federal crop insurance and actually some additional producer assistance to increase the subsidization of some of those crop insurance premiums. A positive thing given how important federal crop insurance is to farmers in this state and across the Midwest. Improved livestock disaster programs, some additional investments in working land conservation programs. One of the things that we did have in that House version of the Farm Bill, though, were some new provisions as it related to increasing the cost share in which states have to provide some money for the SNAP program, and that was based upon the SNAP error rate. It's important to note, and I don't know that many folks know this, as we all know, and I don't mean this to attack the nutrition side of the Farm Bill by any means, but it's a reminder as to how the money's divided. And I think everyone knows that a majority of the Farm Bill, when we talk about a Farm Bill, 80% of that Farm Bill is the nutrition side of things. If you look at what this Farm Bill, of what we've been talking about, what it would cost on a 10-year basis, we're looking at about $1.5 trillion. About $1.2 trillion of that is just the SNAP program. I'm guessing if I asked, does anyone know what the second largest title of the Farm Bill would be? Most of you would not know that the second largest title of the Farm Bill is actually the error rate of the SNAP program. SNAP payments that are made that should not be made, either too much or too little. Most of the time, it's on the too much side of things. And so you have some states that have really honest to goodness, have utilized the system and tried to provide some additional money for their own state and for some of its citizens, and have not done as good of a job in bringing the error rate down. You have the state of Alaska that has an error rate of over 60%. You have the state of New Jersey, which has an awful lot more people than the state of Alaska, has an error rate that's in the 30s, I believe. So really, it is problematic. Republicans have been trying to tackle this for a while, and so they have decided to tie in a state cost share with the SNAP error rate. Basically, if your error rate is so high, you're responsible for this percent of your SNAP benefits that you have to pay out. They also increased quite a bit. They increased state administrative fees is now at 75%. Versus the 50% of where we were. So we worked very closely with Congressman Bacon. This was dealt with in the House Ag Committee to start with. We worked very closely with him. Not that we have an issue with trying to make sure that federal money only goes to those who need federal money, but we were looking at one time, given the different provisions and the different ideas that were going around, the state of Nebraska would have been on the hook for a little over $100 million worth of SNAP spending that we simply did not have money for to begin with. And so there was some concern there. They were able to pare that back a little bit. The Senate, and I'll fast forward on the Senate side of things really quickly, the Senate bill looks largely similar now. The House was able to pass theirs in May a couple days ago, basically about a month ago now, the 22nd of May. They passed their bill, and those provisions that we see in front of us that you see there, those made it through. On the Senate side, the House Ag Committee released their version of the bill. Senate Finance released their version just this week. Still going through all that, but largely is the same as the House version, but there are going to be some differences when it comes to state and local tax deductions, when it comes to some of the Farm Bill side of things, kind of nibbling around the edges a little bit. The SNAP provision, though, has changed, where if a state brings their error rate down, I believe down to 7 or 6%, the federal government continues to pick up the entire cost of that. So some changes there. We work very closely with Congressman Bacon on the House side. We'll work very closely with Senator Fisher on the ag side of things as well, given that those are done in the House Ag Committee and the Senate Ag Committee. Those Farm Bill provisions are important there. And then Senate Finance is dealing with all the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act provisions, where we worked with Congressman Smith, worked very closely with him on the House Ways and Means side. So that's where we got our reconciliation. The Senate's going to try to get their bill done before July 4th, before the recess there. So we will see what happens there. The Vice President came out today and said he wants it before he wants that before the August recess, that this needs to be to the president's desk by the August recess. So hopefully that happens sooner rather than later. But we're working very closely with our delegation to try to make sure we get as good a deal as we possibly can. Next slide, please, Madison. I'll work through these relatively quickly here. Madison, there we go. Just a quick run through. You can go back to the trade side of things. So on the trade side, here's where we are. We've gone back and forth all over the place, and so I want to make sure folks know where we are. On steel and aluminum, we had the initial 25% tariff that was doubled to 50% in June. That is where we are sitting at today. The UK, their status is still unclear. We did announce, the White House did announce a free trade agreement or a trade agreement with the UK to buy more U.S. beef and also buy more U.S. ethanol. We still need to see what that looks like. But on the steel and aluminum side, 50% tariffs on imported steel and aluminum as of June. On the EU, we have an initial 20% tariff that was halved to 10%, and that lasts until July 9th. We will have to see what the president decides on that front. On China, you kind of see where we were. We started at 10% tariffs. We went to 20. Then we jumped up to 145% for about 3, 4, 5 days a week. And then that dropped back down to 20% after we kind of struck a little bit of a deal with China. And so that's where we're sitting right now with China. Canada and Mexico, back in February, we had the 25% tariff placed on goods coming in from Mexico and Canada. That has now, we've had delays in there, some exemptions for USMCA goods, including a lot of agricultural products and energy products as well, including fertilizer, potash fertilizer. So that's a big deal for us. And then the president did announce, several months ago, the reciprocal tariff conversation. So initial 10% baseline across the board, and then higher for some 60 countries around the world. The president did announce then a couple days later, a few hours later, a 90-day delay in that so countries could negotiate. But that 10% baseline tariff remains across the board. So that's where we are, the run through of where we are on the tariff side of things. But the question we get asked more often than not is, what do we want? And what we want is more markets, and we want to reduce trade barriers. That's it. It's very simple. We released our trade report this year. It had a lot of detail in there on what our trade has done, what we're looking at, some things we need to fix. But then we released a policy agenda that's focused in on new markets, reduce barriers. It's pretty simple. Next slide, please, Madison. The last thing I want to hit on really quickly is the MAHA report, and I know we're a couple weeks after that, but it's been an important issue for us. So the MAHA report, the Make America Healthy Again report, was released back on May 22nd, and the MAHA Commission was formed by executive order led by HHS Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr., also includes USDA Secretary Rollins and EPA Administrator Zeldin. And the initial report focused on kids and trying to make kids healthy. And it's a goal we share. We don't want kids to be unhealthy. But as always, the devil's in the details. And so when the report focused in on processed foods, chemicals in the environment, childhood behavior and exercise, medications kids take, we were very interested because the processed foods conversation, chemicals in the environment, what did the report say? The report went back and forth and really blamed a lot of processed foods for childhood obesity issues. The reminder is that agricultural products go into some of those processed foods. We can call yogurt a processed food, depending upon your definition. There's so many definitions of that. It's a very difficult conversation to have, and it's not nearly as simple as one would think. It's not just sugar and chips, even though I would remind folks that in this state we produce potatoes. We also produce sugar. And so this conversation is not as easy as maybe one would think. And then lastly, our biggest concern on the report is that it did call out crop protection products. Specifically, it named glyphosate and atrazine as problems. It talked about how crop protection products were in dust. It was in the air generally. It's in everyone's homes. It created a lot of fear in our mind and some undue fear, while at the same time continuing to talk about how farmers are the partner, that the administration loves farmers and we continue to have the safest, most foodable food in the world. So we were caught in the whiplash a little bit there on back and forth. We have a lot of concerns there. And so our take and what we have done is we've expressed our concerns to the administration directly. directly. We were in DC last week, and we talked to them a little bit about that. My counterparts from across the country were also in DC, had different meetings across Washington. We met with the EPA, we met with USDA, we talked to folks at the White House. My counterpart from Iowa met directly with a secretary. My counterpart from Kansas met with someone directly who worked in HHS with Secretary Kennedy. Really across the board, talking with the administration about this report, about our concerns, and the reminder that HHS is not the regulator of pesticides. It is the EPA, and the EPA continues to say, and the science continues to back, that pesticide products, specifically glyphosate and atrazine, including, have been found to be safe when utilized under the label. That is what the science has shown, both private research and public research. And maybe we need to continue to understand that. The administration recognizes the importance of agriculture, but some of the same concerns maybe we had of Mr. Kennedy are popped up a little bit in this report. I think we're in a good spot. We've had some really good conversations over the past several weeks, but this is an issue we're paying very close attention to. And don't think of this as a right or left issue. We've seen a lot of just as many Democrats and Republicans introducing food level legislation that targets food ingredients and trying to list pesticides in food ingredients and some of those things. So don't think of this as just simply a Democrat-Republican issue. It is really a bipartisan issue, and unfortunately, maybe a little bit to our detriment on that front, that we need to continue to try and talk about agriculture and the importance of modern agriculture and the crop protection products we use. So that is where we are on the MAHA report side of things. I went through very, very quickly. We have a couple more minutes. We'll maybe go over a couple minutes for questions. But I'll throw that out there. What questions do folks have for our state team, for me, on the federal side of things? What can we answer for everyone this evening?
And we do have a question, Jordan.
Yes, you can raise your hand and we can unmute you, or you can type it in.
Dustin did have his hand up, but now he put it back down. So you can certainly type your questions into the question box in the chat box, or you can raise your hand and we will put you on. You can ask your question live. Oh, Scott Nelson has a question. Well, Scott, you'll have to unmute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Oh, try again.
You're muted, Scott.
Yep, you'll need to unmute again. There you go.
Okay. Any luck there?
Yep, we can hear you.
Hey, thank you guys for all that you've done and everything you do. It's certainly been an exciting year and not always chocked full of all the wins that we hoped for. So thanks for sticking with it and keeping us up to date. And I don't think I have anything specific, but since no one else is raising their hand, I thought I'd chime in with that. So I'll let you go. Bye.
I just want everyone to know we did not pay Scott for that compliment. We appreciate it, though. Thank you, Scott.
But his check is still in the mail.
That's right. We'll have to drop one in the mail. We do appreciate that.
We will. Yeah.
That's right. That's right.
Thanks, Scott.
Any other questions?
Oh, Brock has a question. Need to unmute Brock. There you go.
I was just curious how soon policy guides, and I got on a little late, so maybe that's coming out, but I know as the County Farm Bureau, we started talking about policies on a couple bills that, might be coming up next year and stuff again. When should we be looking for policy guides coming out?
It's a great question, Brock. Our policy guides are due to our department on July 1st, but we normally give the communications department a couple weeks to go through that. So we try to get those out at the end of August, 1st of September, but I think it's mid-August, I think is when we try to get those out there. But that is when
we are mid-August, I think we try to get them out.
Yep. So we'll get those out as quick as we possibly can. I think 1st of August, sorry. We'll get those out to everyone as soon as we can. We actually have had a couple meetings about that and trying to identify issues. We have a pretty long list. We're going to try to narrow them down and combine some, but it's a good question, and one we want folks to remember is that this is an important time for policy development as we head into the summer. Policy development happens year round, but specifically, this summer as you're thinking about things post legislative session, what are some issues that you all think we need to have maybe a change in policy, addition to policy, but also as we get into annual meeting season for sure, discussions there. And we try to provide what's called policy development guides for those folks who may not know, PD guides that were written by the public policy team that try to identify some questions and identify some issues and some questions those issues that we think members need to be thinking about in terms of where we need some policy on.
And Jordan, I'll also add to that, if your county farm bureau has questions, the public policy team is here to help. If you
yes, please,
have
any questions?
Things, yep, would like assistance.
Any other questions?
There's a question in the question box, Jordan. Do you see that?
Let me pull it up here. My window changed. Do we get a sense of how much ag sense Brooke has and how? So it's a question about the secretary, how committed she is to working, fighting for agriculture within the administration. And then Packers and Stockyards is here too. Yes, Kevin. Yes, Secretary Rollins. So we have met with her directly. We have chatted with her. I will tell you, Secretary Rollins is a very knowledgeable person when it comes to agriculture. I think she's very committed, and I think what she has told from what I hear for folks who have met with her during her confirmation, as well as the conversations that we had with her directly, she is very willing to go to bat for agriculture in the White House with the administration. And we've seen some of that when it comes to some of this Make America Healthy Again stuff. She's very supportive of, I think, the general effort, as we all are. At the same time, we've been told that the report, maybe the initial drafts, were a little more negative than what even this one started as, and so, or where it ended maybe. And so I think she's very willing, from what we understand and what I've seen, is very willing to stand up to agriculture. Packers and Stockyards, I have not seen a lot from the administration on that one yet. Kevin, I know that the last administration, they worked through quite a few rules on that front. We'll see what this administration does with some of those. But for sure, I know that they care about farmers and ranchers. They talk about their care for farmers and ranchers. I know that enforcement continues to happen on that front, but I haven't not heard of any specific thing here or there on Packers and Stockyards yet with this administration. But that doesn't mean that they haven't done some things. Other questions? I want to wrap this up relatively soon if we can. I don't want to cut anyone off, but I also want to be very cognizant of everyone's time. We probably talked a little too long, me, myself specifically. But any other questions folks have? All right. Well, I will say this. We appreciate everyone jumping on. We have appreciated you all taking part in these webinars. I hope you have found them valuable. Please, we did get another question up here. There's a conversation happening tomorrow night in Hallam about property valuation increases. Senator Brandt will be there, and some county officials as well. So if you're in that Lancaster County area around Hallam tomorrow night, there is a town hall meeting about property valuation increases. So anything you want to add there, Bruce? I just wanted to say that one on there.
Oh, I think you covered it.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, Lancaster County,
Okay.
I say this, Lancaster County experienced some of the greatest increases of valuations, 42% on average to be specific. And we're going to have a conversation about what things you can possibly do in the near term, as well as things that we can be doing in the long range, beginning with the next legislative session. So should be a good conversation.
Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you all for jumping on. We appreciate it immensely. We will catch you on down the road. We are planning as a department to get out quite a bit this summer. And so please be in communication with your field staff person, with us. We'd like to try to get some members together to talk through some issues and just travel around the countryside a little bit and try to get out of Lincoln as often as possible this summer. So please be in touch with us, be in touch with Whitney, be in touch with our regional managers. We would appreciate it. Again, thanks everyone for joining us. We will catch you down the road. Feel free to call any of us if you have any questions on anything we talked about or any other issue.